Hello, dear Ashu students. There were three consecutive questions asked about lupus. Okay, so I would like to give you a clarification in this video. Basically, it cannot be explained in single words, say yes or no. So it needs a kind of brief explanation. Okay, for the diagnosis of lupus. Okay, for the diagnosis of lupus. ANA by immunofluorescence is the investigation of choice. Okay, it is not ANA by ELISA and it is not ANA profile. The reason behind this is the ANA profile, what we do in our regular clinical practice, okay, is basically an immunoblot which contains about 15 to 17 antigens based on the kit in which you do the testing. Okay. And there are always fallacies with the immunoblot because the antigens which are impregnated in the blot may get denatured at some point of time, and if you use ANA profile as a screening test, you tend to miss a lot of lupus patients. And second thing, ANA by immunofluorescence is a very good screening test because we are using the substrate of a CA larynx cell line, so which contains the nucleus, which contains the cytoplasm. So whatever antibodies are targeting the nucleus, whatever antibodies are targeting the cytoplasm, everything can be easily detected with the help of an immunofluorescence. Okay, so the initial investigation of choice is always ANA by immunofluorescence. Okay, so this is point number one. So when you use a test as a titer, coming to the titer interpretation of immunofluorescence, we usually talk about three things. Okay, so the first thing is, what is the initial recommended titer in which the test has to be done? Previously, when ANA was done in the dilution of 1 in 40, there were a large number of false positive reports, and reports say that there is about 30 to 40% positivity in healthy adults when you do the ANA immunofluorescence at 1 in 40 titer. So that is why people came up with the recommendation that 1 in 80 is the minimum cutoff, minimum dilution in which you have to do immunofluorescence, and that is what is universally followed up. Okay, so what we do initially is we start with the 1:80 titer. Okay, in places where there is an affordability issue is not a problem, so you can go in up to doubling dilutions like 1 in 80, 1 in 160, 1 in 320, and so on and so forth till 1 in 1280. So this is the titers that we follow. Okay. So we start with the single titer and see where how much titer the ANA is testing positively, and we report the N titer pattern. So this is what we report. And the third thing what we look into is the intensity of the fluorescence. We mention it from 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2, 4 plus. Okay, so while I'm talking about this, what is coming to our mind is the titer has nothing to do with the intensity or quantity of the antibodies. Okay, it is not a semi-quantitative method. So to say that if a patient is having a titer of 1 in 1280, it means the patient is having a clinical significant disease, and the titer of antibodies are very high. If it is 1 in 80, it doesn't mean that it is a clinically insignificant disease. So the recommended initial titer is 1 in 80. So the increase in the titers of immunofluorescence antibody doesn't mean that the patient is having any significant disease. So immunofluorescence has to be used only as a screening test, not as a follow-up investigation. Once your patient is confirmed to have a diagnosis of lupus, please never ever repeat ANA by immunofluorescence. So this is point number one. This is the answer for the third question. Now the second thing, somebody was asking about the titers of ANA for follow-up and titers of dsDNA for follow-up. So coming to titers of ANA for follow-up. So I said you ANA immunofluorescence, the titers what we mentioned doesn't have any meaning with the follow-up, and at the same time nobody is recommending to do ANA by ELISA. It is a totally obsolete investigation. We don't do ANA by ELISA in our regular clinical practice in rheumatology. Okay, so yes, so ANA titers, be it by ELISA, be it by immunofluorescence, the ANA titers are not useful in the assessment of patients with lupus on follow-up, and they don't have any prognostic value. Okay, that neither the ANA titers by IFA nor the titers of the ANA ELISA don't have any prognostic value. But when you consider anti-dsDNA, if done by an ELISA or an enzyme immunoassay method or a method like CLIA, chemiluminescent immunoassay, you get a titer of the antibody, and when the titers are high, yes, you can predict the increased risk of lupus nephritis. And if a patient who is clinically doing well, all of a sudden has a rise in dsDNA titers, antibody titers, you might predict a clinical flare in the subsequent period. So only isolated increase in anti-dsDNA titers does not warrant any change of treatment. Okay, so yes, it is one of the tools, serological tools, which are useful in the monitoring of patients with lupus. Okay. And one more thing I want to add, anti-dsDNA is also done by a method which is called as indirect immunofluorescence using Cryptidia lucile assay. And this assay measures dsDNA and reports it as either positive or negative, and this cannot be used for assessing the disease activity. So this is for the answer for the second question. Coming to the third question, what you asked, what is the role of ESR in the monitoring of disease activity in lupus? So a very important point to stress here. So lupus is an autoimmune disease, right? It is characterized by large number of antibodies. So antibodies are flooded up in patients with lupus. So what happens? Antibodies are nothing but globulins, right? So what is the causes of increase in ESR in a patient with lupus? The most important factor is hypergammaglobulinemia. So hypergammaglobulinemia would increase the ESR levels indirectly. So even in a patient who is in clinical remission, you cannot rely upon ESR as a marker of disease activity. Okay, and second marker of disease activity is CRP. So again, patients who are having active lupus can have a normal CRP. So because lupus is a interferon alpha signature containing disease, okay, it's characterized by interferon alpha genetic signatures. Interferon alpha induced proteins are large in number, so that would suppress the CRP production. So this is number one. As lupus is an autoimmune disease, patients can have anti-CRP antibodies that would again decrease the levels of CRP. And number three, patients can have CRP polymorphisms with decreased expression of CRP, though in a patient having active lupus. So as CRP can be normal in patients with lupus, again this is not a tool for monitoring the disease activity of patients with lupus. Okay, hope this explanation was useful to you. Don't worry about the length of the video because lupus is not as simple as you think. It's interesting, and every patient with lupus is unique, and you would find out every new thing from every patient, like opening out a Pandora box. Okay, it's bye for now. Good night. Take care.